A watertight and heavy security presence, Ohanaeze Ndigbo holds the mother of all summit on the Igbo position on restructuring of Nigeria here at Ekweme Square, Awka, Anambra State. The event was packed full with Igbo leadership, from political leaders to traditional, religious, market leaders, and most importantly, the Igbo people in general, who left all their engagement and businesses to grace the occasion. Also, various pro-Biafran group leaders were present at the event. A moment of silence was observed in honor of souls of Biafra people killed during the 1967 to 1970 genocide war, and that of IPOB members, MASOB members, and other Biafra agitators that have lost their lives in the current Biafra agitation.
Who did so in 1945, 1953, 1966, 1967 to 1970. Presently, IPOB and MASOB youths who are laying down their lives regularly. We also remember Colonel Atuzie, a great leader, the General Secretary General of Ohanaeze Ndigbo. Men and women who have laid down their life for the survival of the Igbo nation rest in the bosom of the Lord, in the name of God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Every nation on earth is a work in progress. Citizens of both advanced and developing countries continue to ask their countries hard questions that will lead them to a better federation, a better nation, and a better society. And Nigeria cannot be an exception to this rule. So we must ask Nigeria hard questions too. Fellow Nigerians, the question on everybody's mind today is, what kind of country do Nigerians want for themselves? This is the question that will determine Nigeria's promise, Nigeria's future, and Nigeria's greatness.
Professor Chukwuma Soludo presented the Igbo position on the kind of restructuring Igbo nation want in Nigeria to what he termed irreducible minimum.
For introduction, preamble, ladies and gentlemen, who argue that the Nigerian project is at crossroads, Nigeria needs to be fixed, and all of us need to sit down and fix Nigeria. We argue that despite its abundant potentials and promise, most Nigerians agree that Nigeria as presently structured and governed is not sustainable. In the run-up to Nigeria's independence and after independence in 1960 and 63 Republican constitutions, our founding fathers, Right Honorable Nnamdi Azikiwe, Chief Obafemi Awolowo, Sir Ahmad Bello, and their competitors from all the then southern and northern minority ethnic groups negotiated and gave us a truly federal constitution, which embodied the true principles of federalism, namely autonomy of federating units or regions, fiscal federalism, devolution of power, citizenship, indigenship rights, etc. Under these constitutions, freely negotiated by the Nigerian people, there was a consensus that a truly federal structure was the best for a multi-ethnic, multicultural, multi-religious society such as Nigeria to guarantee justice, fairness, equity, freedom, liberty, as well as a balanced and competitive political and economic structure to give every citizen and section of the country a framework to maximize their God-given potentials. The present 1999 Constitution, foisted by the military regime, which makes a false claim that it is a federal constitution, unhinged all the structures of true federalism and bequeathed a de facto unitary system with concentration of powers and resources at the center. With the choking unitary system and all its dysfunctionality for a diverse country, Nigeria has remained relatively unstable, oscillating unpredictably between the flickers of hope and despair. But most Nigerians agree, ladies and gentlemen, that this system cannot survive and endure for much longer. Albert Einstein, the genius, once said that it is the mark of insanity to continue to do the same thing over and over and expect a different result. For several years, many organized groups, intellectual statesmen and women have persistently called for a revisit to the structure of the Federation to make it work for all Nigerians. It started first as calls for a sovereign national conference. In recent times, the calls have become even more strident and desperate. The Yoruba nation has held a rally at Ibadan in September 2017 and published its agenda on restructuring Nigeria. The South-South geopolitical zone held its own summit in Yenagoa, March this year, and endorsed their template of restructuring. Even the All Progressive Congress, APC, set up a committee on restructuring and its recommendations for restructuring Nigeria public knowledge. The 19 states of the former northern region have also set up their own committee on restructuring, and this report is expected. The Middle Belt Zone is scheduled to hold its own summit on restructuring, while several political parties now make true federalism the centerpiece of their manifestos for a better Nigeria. Ladies and gentlemen, at no time in Nigeria's history has there been a greater broad support for restructuring the Federation than now. But there are also victims at every turn. Every now and again, threats to their lives and properties, as well as brazen discrimination and marginalization in critical areas, underscore their general treatment as unequal citizens of Nigeria. Consequently, there is a segment of the Igbo society that has lost hope in the Nigerian dream, believes that Nigeria will never work for the Igbos and hence agitate for an exit from the Union. But a preponderance of views among Igbos is that a restructured Nigeria that works for all Nigerians remains the first best option. Irreducible minimum. At least, even if we don't make progress on anything, let us set a deadline that within the next 3 months, 24 states and the federal government in the hands of one political party give us restructuring before the next election. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the submission of Ndigbo, and I started this, and let us go. The next is for you to debate, and if you approve this, it will then be circulated all over the world. And thank you very much, and God bless you, and bless all the delegates and our visitors. Thank you. What I am here to do is to present the raison d'etre for this summit, and that is the agenda, the proposals as articulated by Ndigbo through the various processes and culminating in the endorsement by the IMOB on the 8th of this month. And therefore, what I present here is entitled Restructuring the Nigerian Federation, the Position of Ndigbo. And at the end of this summit, we're presenting this for adoption of this General Assembly in Ndigbo. The distinguished delegates from all the 7 states where Igbos inhabit in Nigeria. And this is today at the Ekwueme Square, and appropriately when adopted, we want to call this the Ekwueme Square Declaration. I will go very fast, I'm not going to read everything, but I will go to the main essential aspects. For introduction, preamble, ladies and gentlemen, we argue that the Nigerian project is at crossroads. Nigeria needs to be fixed, and all of us need to sit down and fix Nigeria. We argue that despite its abundant potentials and promise, most Nigerians agree that Nigeria as presently structured and governed is not sustainable. In the run-up to Nigeria's independence and after independence in the 1960 and 63 Republican constitutions, our founding fathers, Right Honorable Nnamdi Azikiwe, Chief Obafemi Awolowo, Sir Ahmad Bello, and their compatriots from all the then southern and northern minority ethnic groups negotiated and gave us a truly federal constitution, which embodied the true principles of federalism, namely autonomy of federating units or regions, fiscal federalism, devolution of power, citizenship, indigenship rights, etc. Under these constitutions, freely negotiated by the Nigerian people, there was a consensus that a truly federal structure was the best for a multi-ethnic, multicultural, multi-religious society such as Nigeria to guarantee justice, fairness, equity, freedom, liberty, as well as a balanced and competitive political and economic structure to give every citizen and section of the country a framework to maximize their God-given potentials. The present 1999 Constitution, foisted by the military regime, which makes a false claim that it is a federal constitution, unhinged all the structures of true federalism and bequeathed a de facto unitary system with concentration of powers and resources at the center. With the choking unitary system and all its dysfunctionality for a diverse country, Nigeria has remained relatively unstable, oscillating unpredictably between the flickers of hope and despair. And most Nigerians agree, ladies and gentlemen, that this system cannot survive and endure for much longer. Albert Einstein, the genius, once said that it is the mark of insanity to continue to do the same thing over and over and expect a different result. For several years, many organized groups, intellectuals, statesmen, and women have persistently called for a revisit to the structure of the Federation to make it work for all Nigerians. It started first as calls for a sovereign national conference. In recent times, the calls have become even more strident and desperate. The Yoruba nation has held a rally at Ibadan in September 2017 and published its agenda on restructuring Nigeria. The South-South geopolitical zone held its own summit in Yenagoa in March this year and endorsed their template of restructuring. Even the All Progressive Congress, APC, set up a committee on restructuring, and these recommendations for restructuring Nigeria are public knowledge. The 19 states of the former northern region have also set up their own committee on restructuring, and this report is expected. The Middle Belt Zone is scheduled to hold its own summit on restructuring, while several political parties now make true federalism the centerpiece of their manifestos for a better Nigeria. Ladies and gentlemen, at no time in Nigeria's history has there been a greater broad support for restructuring the Federation than now. For the estimated 57 million Nigerian Igbos scattered in all villages of Nigeria and around the world, the demand for a restructured Nigeria that guarantees security of life and property, freedom and liberty, equity, justice and development has a unique significance. No other ethnic group has a greater stake in the Nigerian project than Ndigbo, by virtue of tens of millions of Ndigbo who live and invest everywhere in Nigeria outside Igbo land. But they are also victims at every turn. Every now and again, threats to their lives and properties, as well as brazen discrimination and marginalization in critical areas, underscore their general treatment as unequal citizens of Nigeria. Consequently, there is a segment of the Igbo society that has lost hope in the Nigerian dream, believes that Nigeria will never work for the Igbos, and hence agitate for an exit from the Union. But a preponderance of views among Igbos is that a restructured Nigeria that works for all Nigerians remains the first best option. The agenda that we present here distills from accumulated years of work on the subject by successive regimes of Ohanaeze Ndigbo, various Igbo think tanks, especially the submissions of the Igbo leaders of thought for the 2014 National Conference, various Igbo positions for the 1994 Constitutional Conference, and the 2005 and 2014 National Conferences, report of the committee set up by the Southeast Governors on the review of the 1999 Constitution, the report of the World Igbo Summit by the Igbo Renaissance Center, Uturu, various submissions or reports of Bayaki Kenga, Izu Munna, Nzuko Munna, the Igbo Intelligentsia, the World Igbo Congress, reports of various meetings and conferences of Igbo stakeholders and leaders. The Ohanaeze Planning and Strategy Committee and the Ohanaeze Committee, Organizing Committee for the Summit on Restructuring, also embarked on town hall style consultative meetings in Abuja, Lagos, and Enugu to collect inputs from major segments of the Igbo society. Memoranda and inputs were also received by over 40 pan-Igbo groups, NGOs, and individuals. A draft of what I'm presenting here was presented and debated at the National Executive Committee of Ohanaeze and as well as the IMOB of Ohanaeze on the 8th of this month. And therefore, what we have here is a summary, and the issues remain work in progress. The position of Ndigbo is to seek for a transformed Nigeria that works for every Nigerian citizen. A level playing field for all Nigerians to enjoy freedom, liberty, fairness, equity, and justice to maximize their fullest potentials. Ndigbo are uniquely positioned by virtue of their huge stake in Nigeria to join hands with every willing party to champion a pan-Nigeria agenda. We do not seek any preferential or differential treatment from Nigeria. Ndigbo want a Nigeria that works to maximize their security, prosperity, and happiness. Igbos also want a Nigeria that allows every part of Nigeria the latitude and opportunity to develop at their own pace. We want a national conversation to create a new and better Nigeria for all Nigerians. And below now are some of the specific recommendations or proposals or the position of Ndigbo. Equality of regions or geopolitical zones. Section 4. Whether regions or states become the federating units and whether or not equal numbers of states are created in each zone, Ndigbo demand that the equality of the 6 geopolitical zones should be enshrined in the Constitution. Politically, representation at the federal cabinet, as well as the twin chambers of the federal legislature, shall be based on equality of zones or regions. Furthermore, sharing of revenues, distribution of infrastructure by the federal government, and federal character principle shall be applied on the basis of equality of zones. Section 5, Citizenship, Indigenship Rights. Nigerian citizenship is acquired through the criteria for citizenship as provided in the Nigerian Constitution. The concept of the state of origin should be scrapped from the Constitution of the Federation and replaced with the state of residence. As an alternative to the above, if you don't scrap it, the state of origin, we then demand the following residency and civic rights responsibilities to include 2 conditions. Number 1, any child born of Nigerian parents anywhere in Nigeria shall acquire the indigenship residency rights of the area at birth. Number 2, similarly, any Nigerian citizen who has resided in any part of Nigeria and paid taxes there for a period of 10 years shall acquire the indigenship or residency rights of the area except for the right to their traditional stool. Internal Security, Section 6. There shall be established a 2 or 3 tier police structure with defined responsibilities as follows. A police force for the federation and controlled by the federal government and the regional or state constitutions to establish separate police forces for each region and maybe state. The police force at every level shall be headed by a non-partisan professional. The appointment and removal of such a head of the police shall be vested in an independent body. 7. Sharing of financial resources of fiscal federalism. We argue that Section 162 of the 1999 Constitution is a negation of the principle of federalism. It should be abrogated. In its place, a truly federal system that gives control of the resources to the competent component units and replaces the current system of unconditional transfers with conditional transfers from the center as follows. 1. We Ndigbo of the opinion that states should have control over all their natural resources within their territory. Fiscal federalism presupposes the revocation of the Land Use Act of 1978, the Solid Minerals Act, as well as the various Petroleum Gas Acts and amendments since 1969. The right of ownership, control, and exploitation of these and other assets should be returned to the states and or the federating units. The taxation powers of the various tiers of government should be reviewed to give the federating units greater flexibility and scope to generate revenue internally. And states within the federating units should collect and keep 50% of the rents, royalties, and profits taxes on mineral derived from their states. Pay 20% to the regional government and 30% to the federal government, provided that each tier of government shall save at least 5% of the receipts from natural mineral resources as future generation fund. The federal government should set aside 40% of revenue collected from the states or regions as distributable pool account. The balance of 60% plus 60% of its own independent revenue, such as customs duty, federal VAT, federal income tax, etc., shall be deployed to its diminished responsibilities. The sharing of the DPA should be equitable and should replace the present unconditional revenue allocation to the states and local governments. Among other things, the distributable pool account will be deployed to treat all kinds of emergencies, including flood, natural environmental emergencies like flood, erosion, earthquakes, conflict, man-made disaster, desert encroachment, and so on. And the distributable capital account will be distributed mainly as matching grants, no longer the unconditional handout from Abuja, so that each region can then strive as before to be able to develop on a competitive basis. The states within each region shall collectively decide what percentage of their consolidated revenue they shall allocate to the regional government for its operations, provided that such contributions shall not be less than 10% of the respective state's revenue. Section 8, and we'll wrap up, merit and federal character principle. Nigeria must maintain an appropriate balance between merit and affirmative action in the conduct of national and regional state affairs and the distribution of appointment, amenities, opportunities, and privileges among constituent parts. For example, while 60% should be reserved to merit, 40% could be reserved to ensure federal character principle or affirmative action. We recommend that the Federal Character Commission be replaced with Merit and Equal Opportunities Commission. And the next is elections. That's section 9 and 10, with this ends in 10. Elections into the office of the President and Federal Legislature shall be conducted by the electoral body of the federal government. Elections into the regional or state offices shall be conducted by electoral or bodies set up by the regional or state constitutions or laws. It is believed that the current system of simple plurality system with simple relative majority as winner encourages minority governments and is considered out of date. We hereby propose a majoritarian system whereby a winner must score at least 50% of the votes cast to win an election. Independent candidates serve as a form of protest to political parties and should be allowed in the electoral system provided that such candidates meet some minimum criteria to be on the ballot. Section 10 is on judiciary. We argue that each federating unit shall have its judicial system with courts of first instance, appellate court, and supreme courts to adjudicate on matters that are in the concurrent and residual list, as well as matters exclusively reserved for the federating units. Where the states are the federating units, there shall be state high courts and zonal or regional court of appeal and zonal or regional supreme court on matters pertaining to the states and the zones respectively. It is the states or regional courts and their appellate courts that will have jurisdiction over electoral matters in their respective states or regions, except matters pertaining to the presidential election or federal elections. There shall also be the Federal High Court, Federal Appeal Court, and Federal Supreme Court to deal with matters on the exclusive list of the Constitution, as well as constitutional matters or conflicts between the federating units and the federal government. The next, we end with an annex. The Ndigbo proposed an annex, and this annex deals with the devolution of powers between the various tiers of government. Between the center, what should be in the exclusive list and what should be in the concurrent list. But a major change which Ndigbo proposed is that, unlike in the current 1999 Constitution, the items on the concurrent list will no longer have the federal government having the overriding power. It is the case that federal government should, in fact, legislate mostly to maintain national minimum standards on items on the concurrent list, and leave the regions and the states to legislate on operational matters and determine how their region or states should go. Where there is a conflict between the states and or the federating units and the federal government, it is proposed that such conflicts should be resolved through mutual consent. Ladies and gentlemen, what I have presented so far, that's the annex, and this particular document, if approved by this summit, we're going to have it signed by the appropriate authorities or the representatives of the various contingent states, traditional rulers, and major segments of the Igbo society, and circulated to everybody. We're just putting this as an agenda for deliberation. But then, in conclusion, and I just said this conclusion as a personal note, ladies and gentlemen, philosophers have interpreted the world. The problem is to change it. I think let us get it done. Everybody seems to agree that we need to restructure Nigeria. PDP, APC, you dominate the National Assembly, and as we have proposed, give us a law tomorrow, impanel a constituent assembly, let them get to work. Even for the APC, you have recommended 3 key areas. You control 24 states of Nigeria plus the federal government. If you are serious about restructuring Nigeria, as you have said, get to work, and within the next 3 months, at least you have proposed that mineral resources should go to the states. That's a proposal they have there, that mineral resources should be given back to the states. You propose a state police, and you have also proposed that, I think that is one other major, that we should scrap the local governments from the Constitution and leave the issue of the local government to be within the purview of the states. At least, even if we don't make progress on anything, let us set a deadline that within the next 3 months, 24 states and the federal government in the hands of one political party give us restructuring before the next election. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the submission of Ndigbo, and I've added this, and let us go. The next is for you to debate, and if you approve this, it will then be circulated all over the world. And thank you very much, and God bless you, and bless all the delegates and our visitors. Thank you.
Senator Victor Ume and Dr. Okudili Ezenwankwo lend their voices on what is best for Igbo nation. As a distinguished senator of Federal Republic, what kind of restructuring do you think will enhance Igbo cause in Nigeria?
I think the critical thing is that the Nigerian constitution was prepared by an individual for the purpose of making the late Abacha an imperial president. The successive military regimes created states and local governments and made sure that the Igbos were punished in that exercise. We have 5 states and 95 local governments. Our neighbors, the South has 6 states and 123 local governments. Our brothers from the Southwest, they have 137 local governments and 6 states. Up north, the gap is wider. The Northwest has 7 states and almost 140 something local governments. When the military was exiting, they wrote a constitution where they locked down everything in that constitution. But there shall be 36 states in the Federation of Nigeria. They listed the states in a schedule. There shall be 774 local governments in the Federation of Nigeria, and listed this number of local governments in a schedule to the very constitution, and went further to make it practically impossible for new states and new local government to be created under the constitution, that very constitution. So what that means is that the Igbos have been consigned to perpetual insignificance in the affairs of Nigeria.
Quickly on the issue of referendum and the possibility of referendum in the Nigerian constitution.
Yes, referendum is actually the best way to go, for the fact that the present constitution which we are operating was not done by the Nigerian people. An individual cannot write a constitution and impose it on the entire country. Through a referendum, we'll be able to agree on how to relate to each other as a people of one country, you know. So that referendum is a word that those who enjoy the present status quo are afraid of. You know, if you look at the various agitations going on, IPOB talks about, IPOB talks about referendum, you know, and I think that's the right thing to do. But in all that, whatever we are seeking to do in Nigeria, we have to be strategic in its approach.
Despite heavy security presence, some handful of people identified as members of Nnamdi Kanu's faction of IPOB raised a stir when they started shouting no to restructuring. However, the situation was properly handled in the best considerable polite manner, and the event went on smoothly without further distraction. Meanwhile, the coalition of pro-Biafran groups applauded leadership of Ohanaeze Ndigbo for organizing the summit and their position on restructuring Nigeria. However, they rejected the call for restructuring, pointing out that the bond to rule House of Fulani Caliphate will continue to foil any call for restructuring of Nigeria, and as such, call for an outright breakup of Nigeria.
This is a coalition of all pro-Biafran groups in Biafra land that came to witness the Ohanaeze Ndigbo summit. And we want to get the position of this coalition of pro-Biafran groups in Biafra land. They are here represented by their leaders, and we want to hear from one of their leaders to tell us what they think about the summit. Comrade Namado, we observe that you are one of the leaders of the pro-Biafran group that have come together to chart a common front. What do you think about today's summit of Ohanaeze Ndigbo?
Actually, the gathering was seen members of the Biafran groups representing our common interest. We are just few. Some of our members, we are dislodged outside. They were not allowed access to come inside the Ohanaeze Ndigbo Square. But the people that managed to find their way in, we are here to observe the going of the summit organized by Ohanaeze Ndigbo. In as much as they have resolved to carry on with their restructuring agenda, which they think that may solve our problem in Nigeria. We want to inform them or remind them that we, the people of Biafra, our determination and our resolve is Biafra. We don't believe in the restructuring of Nigeria. We don't believe in any rearrangement. We believe in outright freedom, independence of our people from outside Fulani domination and the subjection. The way Nigeria is being structured by the British government, colonial masters, there is no way our people can be better than Nigeria. No amount of clamor for restructuring will see the light of the day, because we know that the hand that is holding Nigeria is very strong. We want outright freedom. We want Biafra.
Chairman of this occasion, Ohanaeze Ndigbo, Your Excellencies, the Deputy Senate President, who at this moment is supporting his leader in the National Assembly. Your Excellency Governor Willie Obiano of Anambra State, and all the distinguished guests that have come here, we are going to do two things. The first one is to adopt the communique, the summit communique as read by the erudite Professor Charles Soludo, and I have the singular honor and privilege to move that this solemn assembly do adopt everything that is put in that document as a working tool for us to use in restructuring Nigeria. I so move.
Mindful of the work that has been done by the committee set up for this summit, and realizing that they carry the will of our people, I want to solemnly second the motion that has been moved by the National Assembly caucus leader. I so support.
So we now ask the Speaker of the House of Assembly of Anambra State. We will use you as a point of contact for all the speakers of the Southeast states to put the question. Madam Speaker.
Yeah, thank you. Good. Those in support that this House will adopt all the recommendations by the chairman of this planning summit, in the person of Professor Shukuma Soludo, say aye. Aye. Those against say nay.
They are not here.
The ayes have it.
They are here.
And so we can now move on to the second thing, which is to reassure everybody here, especially our friends that have come from far to be with us here, that we in the National Assembly, cognizant that we will need to move very quickly on this motion, will go back and do the needful by quickly bringing forth a bill to set up a constituent assembly for getting a new constitution of Nigeria based on peace, equity, justice, and fair play. That is what we promise you, and all my colleagues here at the National Assembly, led by our very, very good and dear Ohanaeze Ndigbo Mother, will do whatever we can to bring this to bear. And I want to reassure everybody that this we shall do. Secondly, we want to also say this. We don't want to live in a Nigeria where those that go around and kill people every day, the federal government finds it very, very difficult to declare them a terrorist group. And we now ask that the terrorist caption that has been put on our brothers in IPOB who never killed a single person be hereby rescinded. Chairman of this occasion, Ohanaeze Ndigbo. Your Excellencies, the Deputy Senate President, who at this moment is supporting his leader in the National Assembly. Your Excellency, Governor Willie Obiano of Anambra State, and all the distinguished guests that have come here, we are going to do two things. The first one is to adopt the communique, the summit communique as read by the erudite Professor Charles Soludo, and I have the singular honor and privilege to move that this solemn assembly do adopt everything that is put in that document as a working tool for us to use in restructuring Nigeria. I so move.
Mindful of the work that has been done by the committee set up for this summit, and realizing that they carry the will of our people, I want to solemnly second the motion that has been moved by the National Assembly caucus leader. I so support.
So we now ask the Speaker of the House of Assembly of Anambra State. We will use you as a point of contact for all the speakers of the Southeast states to put the question. Madam Speaker.
Yeah, thank you. Good. Those in support that this House will adopt all the recommendations by the chairman of this planning summit, in the person of Professor Chukwuma Soludo, say aye. Aye. Those against say nay.
They are not here.
The ayes have it.
They are here. And so we can now move on to the second thing, which is to reassure everybody here, especially our friends that have come from far to be with us here, that we in the National Assembly, cognizant that we will need to move very quickly on this motion, will go back and do the needful by quickly bringing forth a bill to set up a constituent assembly for getting a new constitution of Nigeria based on peace, equity, justice, and fair play. That is what we promise you, and all my colleagues here at the National Assembly, led by our very, very good and dear Ohanaeze Ndigbo Mother, will do whatever we can to bring this to bear. And I want to reassure everybody that this we shall do. Secondly, we want to also say this. We don't want to live in a Nigeria where those that go around and kill people every day, the federal government finds it very, very difficult to declare them a terrorist group. And we now ask that the terrorist caption that has been put on our brothers in IPOB who never killed a single person be hereby rescinded. And we want to now ask everybody to please listen to our dear Deputy Senate President.
The chairman of this important summit, Ohanaeze Ndigbo, Chief Iwanyam, will salute you. We recognize the President General for Ohanaeze, Chief Nyangodo. We recognize the Royal Highnesses here present, our brothers and sisters from different parts of Nigeria who are here to show support and solidarity to our people. We recognize in particular the host governor, the governor of Anambra State, for providing this environment and making today possible. First, let me say that I stand by my colleagues from the Southeast in the National Assembly and State Assemblies in adopting the position of Ndigbo on restructuring. Let me add that we're not alone. We have people from other parts of Nigeria who have seen the reason and the need for us to reflect on the journey so far and be able to adjust our movement to enable us arrive at our destination. So today is a very historic day in Nigeria. That we've made a very historic move to move our country forward and be able to stop the killings going on by providing the necessary security architecture in a federal system such as ours. We believe that the resources we have in Nigeria is sufficient to make Nigeria the greatest nation in Africa if we restructure and take advantage of the solid minerals in the north and the agricultural potentials and oil and gas in the south and the human resources all over. We want to thank Nigerians that show solidarity to our people in times of our neglect, especially in the last constitutional conference, where it was agreed that the Southeast require an additional state. I'm happy that most of you are here today to show that you still stand by us. In the next week or two, in the Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, the Southeast Development Commission bill will definitely be passed by the grace of God. Let me also add that in furtherance of what has been agreed today, that we in the National Assembly will continue to network with our brothers and sisters from other parts of Nigeria in order to arrive at sufficient consensus on the issue of restructuring. No part of Nigeria can go it alone. We need to talk to ourselves, we need to network, we need to explain. We need to carry everybody along in this exercise and let them understand that it's the best for everybody. It is a win-win situation. I would like to call on our leaders from different parts of Nigeria to engage those who are not sufficiently convinced on this enterprise that Nigeria will be better and greater for everybody if we restructure our country. And I would like to commit myself to the fact that once the bills for restructuring are produced, that I, Senator Ohanaeze Mother, will be the lead sponsor of those bills. I know, and I'll speak in mind of my colleagues here, that they will all be co-sponsors. We have our colleagues from the Northeast, the Northwest, North Central, the Southwest, South, and other indigenous and citizens of Nigeria in various states who are indeed eager to support these bills to see a better Nigeria for our people and for our future. So we thank all of you for this opportunity, and let the struggle continue. Let the determination never cease. Let us march on. Nigeria indeed will be greater. God bless you all.